Teachers who regularly get invited to high school reunions. What are the most amazing transformations, common patterns, epic stories, saddest declines etc. you've seen through the years? I missed my 10 years reunion, but I went to 15 years. As some said, most people came to impress others. I don't care. I was there to see a guy I was friends with in school. He was a very intelligent dude, but clearly had a problem with authorities. When we got older, he worked as a chemist and also liked drugs. Back in the days, we used to smoke pot regularly, but he found other friends and things for worse, like cooking meth and get your door kicked in weekly by cops or Russians worse. Last thing I heard, he went to jail for a couple of years. When I met him at the reunion, he was also happy to see me. We talked almost the whole evening. It was great. What I liked the most, he found a wife when he got out of jail. She supported him to get rid of an heroin addiction he also got in jail, and he is a proud father of 2 kids. Nice transformation. So, not a teacher and only been to one school reunion. After about 15-20 years, we got in contact via Friends Reunited, if anyone remembers that, and I was chatting with a couple of people in the weeks leading up to the reunion. I was making jokes about seeing a girl, Carol, who everyone wanted to be friends with. Making jokes about how she was a flirt and probably had been through a couple of husbands by now. And someone informed me that she had died of cancer at age 20. Once at the reunion, I asked whatever happened to Gary L. Gary was a joker. He was friends with everyone and, somehow, able to fit in with all the different factions at school. I was told that good old Gary was in prison on multiple counts of possession of CP. Not a teacher, but there was a really remarkable transformation in mine. There was a kid in my high school who was, for lack of a better term, a huge duck up. Lots of drugs, really overweight, constantly getting suspended, getting in fights, trouble with the law, etc. So I show up to my 10-year reunion, and there is this guy there that nobody recognizes. Tall, long hair, muscular, pretty good looking. It's the same guy. Literally none of us could picture him, so he had to show us old photos on his phone. He told me that after high school he got a job cleaning pools, which saved his life according to him. It was really tough work which got him in shape, and helped him kick drugs and gave him a purpose. Eventually he started his own pool cleaning business and has since expanded it enough that he makes fantastic money and doesn't even work 40 hours a week. And it's still growing. It sounded like he had some demons to work through. But he literally went from being somebody we all kinda expected to spend his life in jail, to arguably being the best looking guy at the reunion, making more money than almost anyone there, and just having a huge turnaround. Probably the biggest talk of the night, and honestly, I think everyone was really impressed. I know I was. He deserved all the kudos he got. I'll share an uplifting one. Not a teacher. BTW. It was at my class's 10-year reunion. One of the people who showed up was, well, to put it bluntly, I had never thought much of them when graduation happened. They just kind of coasted through. Had been a bully when they were younger. Definitely didn't take class seriously, not that I ever saw, etc. They didn't go on to be a CEO or something. Anyone can do that. No. Instead they got married, found responsibility, and now had several kids. They were raising a family and trying to be a good parent and spouse. They'd found work they enjoyed and that paid well so they could support that family with a good life. And then, they went up to people at that reunion who they recalled setting an example or giving them a template to build on and thanked them for it. It left me dumbstruck. That takes humility and strength. That is an epic transformation. From just someone who was there probably because they had to be to someone who'd found their being. I was really glad to hear they were doing so well, and see how much they'd changed. I don't ever expect to come back at the 20 and see them running some giant company or anything. But I expect I'll respect them just as highly, probably a bit more, honestly. I was one of the valedictorians and got voted most likely to become president. I dated the same guy most of the way through high school and married him in college. 10 years down the way, I was divorced and on disability for mental illness. I was actually afraid to go to the reunion because things were totally different. I don't know why, but I seriously thought people would think bad of me for getting a divorce. Our school did something interesting for the reunion. One part was a formal sit-down dinner that cost something like $80, but another part was a free barbecue down at the local park. I went to the freebie. Everyone was pretty casual. Very few of the former popular crowd came. Guess they just wanted to show off at the formal dinner. Lots of other people, they had been honors students and had also gotten a harsh smack in the face by life. Lots of the valedictorians and honors students failed out of college by sophomore year. I know a couple of them had gone through rehab. I was surprised to find I wasn't the only one who was mentally ill. We'd all apparently been really good at hiding it in high school. A lot of people got into fields no one would have pegged them for. The shyest girl worked as a farmer rep. Scrawny dorky kid was now absolutely ripped and in the military. He'd been known as a writer and journalist. But I know several people were surprised to hear I'd primarily worked as a computer tech. So I'd worked myself up for nothing. I was glad I went. I'm guessing the school didn't bother to do anything for 20th or 25th. Or maybe the former popular kids decided having a free event again was gauche. My grandpa invited his English teacher from high school to their 60th HS reunion. She was 97 at the time, 101 now, and is sharp as a tack. She had a wonderful time seeing everyone and even remembered a good portion of her students, but did mention that it was disheartening to see students of hers who have died or are suffering from dementia. Half my grade didn't even get invited to our 10-year. Seems just like the popular kids just invited themselves. My school has one every year for all classes. So sometimes parents and children will go together and sometimes even grandparents. My one friend went and from what I've heard the only people there graduated before 95. None of the younger generations showed up save a few who were just curious to see what it is. It's all Karens and 40 to 50-year-old men who pretend like they all graduated a few years ago. The same type of people who constantly brag about that one game where they won the season and talk about nothing else. And middle-aged suburban housewives trying to sell MLMs while asking to speak to the coach of their son's little league team to get him more time on the field. We just had our 20Y reunion a few months ago and it was honestly great. Most people showed up, plus a few of the teachers. Yes, I've always been a relative unpretentious bunch with everyone somewhat getting along. And it was still sort of like that. We all sort of clicked right away. And we basically had no unexpected transformations. Neither positive nor negative. The ones who were expected to pick up a high-rolling career did and the ones expected to surf along in the mid-reckless did as well. There were a few outliers, like the cool skateboarding bloke who wasn't really good in school was now a medical doctor with family and kids. But all in all, it had all turned out more or less as expected. On paper that sounds horrifically boring. But in reality it was incredibly nice to see everyone had made something of themselves and yes, it'd still get along. Even after 20 years. I hate these comments. Why would you go to one you graduated? Get over it. Stfu, you want to see how people who were a big part of our life are doing now and maybe reconnect with some. Saddest declines. Somehow I doubt that somebody who had a great time in high school and is now living an unfulfilling life would attend reunions. Not a teacher. Didn't get invited to my 5-year or my 10-year. Actually happening in 2 months. I got arrested for doing something real stupid my freshman year of college. Spent a year in jail and 3 more on probation. And then when I reached out to the alumni organizing the 5-year, they told me I would not be allowed into the event if I showed up. When I asked why, they said it's just best if you don't come. The few friends I still had from high school tried to convince the organizers otherwise. But by then I had said I didn't want to go anyway, so they let it drop. I totally lied. I wish with all my heart that I could go, and it's one of the worst feelings I ever felt being told that I couldn't. Facebook ruined class reunions for me, so I quit Facebook. It was like a class reunion every ducking day. I know that this is a reach out to teachers, but I want to do a shout out to a teacher. I attended only my 20th year reunion in 1999, and only because I had to return home to my family because my stepmother was dying. I had left town the day after graduation and never looked back. A math teacher who taught calculus and coached football was so amazing in our school and our community that the whole town had created a day devoted to him and named it Garvin Day. He was retiring that year. He was a man of quiet intensity. I remember his catching me and some friends smoking in the boiler room, and he looked at each of us intently. I don't think that's very smart to smoke in here. I'd have thought you all were smarter than this. It was a Catholic college prep school with very strict rules that had any other teacher caught us, we would have been expelled. Coach Garvin had such patience in his ways, and he worked every angle to get us to understand math. He listened, and when he spoke to each one of us. So on the day I roll up to the school, there was a line the whole length of the football field to say hey to Coach Garvin. I couldn't wait to see him, although I doubted he'd remember little ole me after 20 years. It took me almost an hour to hear him speak my name, as he had spoken each other name of every one of us in that line, I imagine. How have you been? What have you been doing? You still smoking? My brother-in-law went to an unofficial 7-year reunion. People kept getting in fights over stuff that happened in high school. He hasn't bothered going to another one. I would mind going to one, but I'm not going to travel literally from one coast to another just to see people who haven't been part of my life for over 30 years. So not a teacher, just giving my story of my 10-year reunion from 2 years ago. One girl in high school had uncut hair to the floor, Jean skirts, some religious thing. Her dad was an asshole, and his girlfriend wore tight shirts and short skirts with spray-on tan and cheap blonde hair dye. Absolute definition of hypocritical asshole parents. The son brother was treated like a king and had absolutely no parenting, all while the girl and her 2 sisters were taught to do all the chores and take care of the dad girlfriend brother. She grew up to be a religious nut job that went further down that rabbit hole and believed that blowing up abortion clinics is totally cool. She hasn't done it yet, but she's rather vocal about it. She sat next to everyone at some point in the reunion and tried to figure out what political affiliation everyone was to start fights. One guy that never took anything seriously went to some branch of the military and got his life together. He's a car mechanic now and is a much nicer guy. And then me. I was a quiet nerd girl and still am. Except I came into the parklet on my motorcycle, which I had for a while but didn't think was a big deal. And everyone thought it was a huge deal that nerdy me rode motorcycles now. I have a cheap one and it wasn't hard to learn. Apparently being able to hold normal conversations, which I could do before, and riding a motorcycle was a huge transformation. I think everyone thought I was somehow shy or weird when I was just quiet and didn't want to talk to them when I was a teenager. So having polite conversation from me blew their minds. 10 years. Trying to impress with wife, a kid and fancy job. 20 years, second wife, second round of kids. Same or similar job. 30 years. Trying to not be the largest person there. 40 years. Just trying to outlive the other people. Those that leapfrog in a career, or are considered lucky in life, rarely go to HS reunions. HS reunions are ridiculously full of drama and gossip. I went to my 40th anniversary. Class of 300 seniors. Around 100 showed up. It was surprising how the cliques from high school instantly re-emerged. At 57, I was still in good shape. Had all my hair. Hardly any grey. That put me in a pretty small minority of the guys. Lots of bald guys with grey hair on the sides. Some of the hottest girls from high school were not remotely good looking anymore, while some of the normal looking girls who were nice back then were still nice and were more beautiful than ever. Some of the people would say stuff like, oh, I'm retired now, cashed in my stock from blah blah blah, or I now just work part-time for the investment firm I started 30 years ago. A few were hoping that old connections could help them find work. I didn't bring my wife or kids, but a few people did. Those who did seemed like they were doing it to say, I know you thought I'd never find a girl, but realistically they were probably thinking, whatever. I haven't thought about you even once since high school. I didn't stay too long, but it was nice to see some people. I'd go back for the 50th if I make it to 67 and haven't moved too far away. I've not been to any reunions as they all seem to be a cash grab for the organizers. Yeah. I wanna pay $125 for a rubber chicken dinner and a cash bar at a local crappy hotel ballroom. My high school has a class reunion once a month at court. I'm always there for traffic court. I like to drive too fast, but mostly everyone from school is always there. It's always interesting to see what they're in for next. Traffic, rape, murder, mostly domestic abuse though. My 10-year reunion had 2 different parties. First one hosted by the old student council was a 2-day event with first day being just the class and the second day being family as well. Cost was to put up X amount for a hotel, food, etc. Second one was by the popular kids who thought the first one was stupid. I agree, and just rent out a bar and have a good time. I went and either because I only talked to maybe 3 people from high school and really didn't care. Plus I'm fatter now and no one needs to see that lol. You wouldn't catch me dead at one of those things. But thanks to Facebook snooping, very carefully so I don't accidentally like photos or friend anyone, I have seen some interesting things. The prom king is still cool. The prom queen is some kind of big wig in the army and the quiet nice kid is a bodybuilder. The popular kids are the keeping up with the Genesis types. Nothing impressive except lots of hair dye and botox. I hope someone snooped through mine to see that I still listen to Backstreet Boys and kept the 2 best friends I had back then. We took different paths but we're all still the same, only older and smarter. Reunions happen how often? Enough to be regular? Our school had a 3-strike rule, even to drugs. I was the supply teacher that people liked and talked to. I helped a kid when his parents were on drugs. It turned out he was on drugs too. Weeks after that he just looked tired and worn out. Next time I see him he's happy, cheerful and a great looking guy. He would no longer have to keep his head down. He was no longer the weird kid that everyone stays away from. Edit. More detail. This year would be my 20th anniversary. I can't think of anything I'd rather do less than see all those people. There are exactly 2 of them I'd like to see again. There's a lot of comments here about the popular kids, but that seems rather silly. They are a social group who communicate, and the others aren't. Why is there no one here saying that all of the non-popular kids threw a reunion? I went to my 10-year. About 50 people out of about 600 were there, and even still, I hung out only with my friends who I had maintained contact with anyway. Man, I showed up on a hit of acid and got swarmed with people because I looked the most casual and comfortable and I was the free spirit of the party. The teachers that were there I ended up having the best conversations with as well. Didn't have a job at the time. Helped out at a bar and ended up getting roped into bartending once the actual event was over. Everyone went to that bar. Ended up making like $400 in 3 hours while simultaneously being a really bad bartender lol. All I know is I got super drunk with my favorite teacher at our 5-year reunion. She's amazing. She's a romance writer, not above a stupid prank, and a ton of fun. It's not the only time we got drunk together. Seeing different aside to teachers is interesting as an adult. My dad came to the US when he was 10 and didn't speak a word of English. Ended up being class valedictorian and winning all 12 of the school's academic prizes, getting a full ride to Harvard, and becoming a professor. At his 50th high school reunion, a woman came up to my mom and angrily said, "Everyone always talks about how your husband won all 12 prizes, but that's not true. My husband won one of them. Obviously. Some hurts never go away." I'm 20. I went to my freshman year and then had to leave high school. Reading this makes me want to go to my high school and ask if I can be invited to the reunions because of how nice it would be to be able to see everyone. I've been so out of touch. When I do talk to the people I was friends with, they thought I had died. So it would be nice to show up looking the kisser alive. Mayo IDKTHX. I ran into my old math teacher who thought I was a complete retard a few months ago. He's not a teacher anymore. Runs a tire shop. He was pretty shocked that I'm doing very well in life. My reunion group wants to add people from 2-3 years before we even graduated, all because they are friends and played sports together in high school. Whatever happened to Al? I remember when he scored 4 touchdowns in one game. He must have gone on to do great things. I didn't really get along with, well, hardly anyone at my old school. Somehow they tracked me down to the state I live now and sent an invite to the 10-year reunion. There was one girl in particular who was a homophobic jerk. I filled out my "Where Are You Now" survey for her saying she had moved to Nebraska where she herded goats with her lesbian life mate. For some reason, they stopped inviting me to reunions after that. I had my 10-year reunion last summer and like I predicted, hardly anyone showed up. I was so jazzed to go because of all the cartoons I watched growing up as a kid talking about reunions, and I showed up to this empty hall and was like, yep, we always keep the bar low around here. My 10th happened at the bar I worked at. I never got an invite, but I dropped out so I didn't expect one. I had a bit of a drinking problem at the time and managed to get myself fired the morning of the reunion. So I didn't crash the party like I had planned. I have a rule about these. I won't show up unless I truly feel like I'm well accomplished. And I won't talk about it unless asked. So far, I'm on a pretty good road to that. Looking like the 15-year reunion will be my first appearance. The closest to a reunion thing I've attended was a retirement party for my favorite teacher. About 7 years after graduation, I knew a few of the students attending and most of the teachers. So in a way it was reunion-ish. In school I was always very sickly. So when I showed up with a cane, I guess some people assumed I was finally dying. In reality I was just recovering from a fracture and was feeling too well to bother with crutches, but not confident enough to bring nothing.